A 13-year-old teenager mysteriously disappeared from her own home in the dead of night just before Mother's Day, leaving behind no clues. The police were immediately contacted and a quick search was initiated. Soon a grim reality began to unfold. Step by step, investigators pieced together the truth, revealing a creepy story that would stun the entire nation. Tristyn Bailey was a 13-year-old middle school student who had spent the first 4 years of her life in Singapore, before her family relocated to the Derb and Crossing neighborhood in St. Johns County, Florida. As the youngest of 5 children born to Stacy and Forrest Bailey, she was the final piece of a family unit they often referred to as the Bailey Seven. Her home life was characterized by the activity of a large household where she was known as the youngest sibling in a close-knit group. In May 2021, Tristyn was in the 7th grade at Patriot Oaks Academy, where she spent much of her time practicing with the school's cheerleading squad or engaging with a large circle of friends, rather than being defined by academic records. Her community knew her through her personality. She was described as an energetic girl who was consistently seen standing up for her peers. Their neighbors and school staff remembered her as a student who brought life to everyone around her. Her mother frequently spoke of her as a powerful child who possessed an innate ability to give back to those in her life. During the weeks leading up to the tragedy, Tristyn was fully immersed in the life of an active teenager, focusing on cheerleading and preparing for the upcoming Mother's Day celebrations with her family. She moved through her suburban neighborhood with the confidence of a child who felt entirely secure in her environment. But while Tristyn was occupied with her plans for the future and her role within the Bailey Seven, someone was quietly harboring a different set of intentions that would ensure she never saw the end of the month. On the evening of Saturday, May 8, 2021, the Derb Crossing neighborhood was quiet. Tristyn was at a friend's house just a few blocks from her home. At 1:15 a.m., she was observed at this residence alongside 14-year-old Aiden Fuji. The environment was a standard suburban setting where teenagers frequently moved between houses without incident. To any observer, it was a typical weekend night. The timeline of her movements became precise through the recovery of residential surveillance footage. At 1:45 a.m., a camera on Saddlestone Doctor recorded Tristyn and Fuji walking together toward the north. In the video, there is no sign of a struggle or immediate distress. They were walking toward a wooded area near a local retention pond. This was the final verified sighting of Tristyn Bailey. A ghost timeline now began to run parallel to the actual events. While her parents slept, believing their daughter was safe, the reality was shifting. At 3:27 a.m., the same surveillance camera captured a single figure running back in the opposite direction. It was Aiden Fuji. He was alone. He was carrying his sneakers in his hands. The girl he had been walking with less than 2 hours earlier was no longer with him. The morning of May 9 was Mother's Day. At approximately 10 a.m., the normalcy of the Bailey household collapsed. Stacy Bailey went to her daughter's room to begin the day's celebrations. But the bed was empty. Phone calls to friends were made in rapid succession. None of them had seen her. The realization that something was wrong was immediate. By 10:40 a.m., a 911 call was placed to the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. The search started as a neighborhood effort, but quickly escalated into a full-scale police operation. Deputies and volunteers moved through the parks and trails. They looked for a girl in a white cheerleader skirt and a black shirt. They found nothing for hours. At approximately 6 p.m. on Mother's Day, the search for Tristyn Bailey came to an abrupt and devastating end. A local resident, who had joined the community effort to find the missing teenager, was walking near a retention pond in a wooded area of the Derb Crossing neighborhood. There, amidst the thick brush and trees, he discovered a body. He immediately called 911, and within minutes, the area was cordoned off as a crime scene. The atmosphere in the neighborhood shifted instantly. The frantic energy of the search was replaced by a heavy, hollow silence. Investigators arriving at the scene found the body of a young female, later confirmed to be Tristyn Bailey. The discovery was not just a recovery. It was a clear indication of a violent crime. Forensic technicians noted the surrounding area was disturbed, signaling a struggle. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the woods as the realization set in for the officers present. The physical state of the scene was documented with clinical precision. It was immediately apparent that the victim had suffered a significant number of injuries. The scale of the violence was unprecedented for the area, suggesting an attack of extreme intensity. Medical examiners would later determine that Tristyn had been stabbed more than 1 time. In that moment, the mission of the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office underwent a total transformation. The goal was no longer to bring a child home. It was to find a killer. The investigation moved from the woods to the forensics lab as detectives began the process of securing the site. The hope that had fueled the volunteers all day vanished, replaced by a demand for answers. The search for a missing girl was over. As the sun went down on Mother's Day, investigators focused their attention on the last person known to be with Tristyn, 14-year-old Aiden Fucci. The process began with a standard witness interview of Fucci's friend, Dolphy Zabshir, who confirmed that Fucci had asked for Tristyn's phone number earlier that morning and that the two had left ABS's house together around 1:10 a.m. When detectives sat across from Fucci, he provided a calm, detailed account. They had walked together, but at a certain point, she turned to go home while he continued walking alone. Arriving at his residence on Castle Dale Court at approximately 3:30 a.m. This initial story created the first major question for the investigation. Detectives noted that the distance between ABS's home and Fucci was a 30-minute walk, yet Fucci claimed it had taken him over 2 hours. While investigators were attempting to reconcile this to our gap, Fucci provided a new piece of evidence himself, not through testimony, but through social media. While sitting in the back of a patrol car, he posted a selfie to Snapchat with a peace sign and the caption, "Hey guys, has anybody seen Tristyn lately?" This breakthrough shifted the perspective of the detectives. They were no longer looking at a grieving friend, but at a suspect whose callousness suggested he knew exactly where Tristyn was. The investigation then moved into Fucci's private spaces. Armed with a search warrant, deputies entered his bedroom and the adjacent bathroom. They did not find the clean, ordinary room of a middle schooler. Instead, they discovered a pair of wet sneakers and denim jeans in a laundry basket that tested positive for blood. In the bathroom sink, they found traces of blood and dirt around the drain, as if someone had recently attempted a hurried cleanup. The final level of discovery in this phase came from a search of the retention pond near where Tristyn's body was found. Divers recovered a buck knife. When investigators examined the weapon, they noticed a critical defect. The very tip of the blade was missing. Back in Fucci's room, they found an empty knife sheath that matched the size and brand of the recovered weapon exactly. Every piece of physical evidence, the bloodied clothes, the suspicious timeline, and the broken weapon was now converging on a single 14-year-old boy. During the processing of the crime scene, forensic investigators discovered two markings that appeared entirely out of place. On the inside of Tristyn's left ankle, the word karma had been written ink. On her right ankle, there was a hand-drawn smiley face. These were not natural injuries or environmental marks. They were deliberate additions to the victim's body. In the context of a 13-year-old girl walking home in a safe neighborhood, these symbols presented a chilling contradiction to any theory of a random or impulsive act.
This anomaly challenged every initial assumption made by the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. If this had been a simple disagreement between teenagers that escalated into violence, the presence of specific, taunting messages suggested a level of cold calculation that did not match the age of the suspect. It raised a haunting question: was this the work of a child, or was something far more sophisticated and sinister at play? The authorities had no record of Tristyn having enemies, and there was no known reason for anyone to mark her in this way. The existence of the karma and smiley face markings remained the most inexplicable part of the early investigation, sitting at odds with the frantic, messy nature of a typical teenage struggle, while the bloodied clothes and the recovered knife provided a physical link to a Den Fuchi. These markings suggested a motive that remained just out of reach. The identification of the prime suspect centered on 14-year-old Den Sean Fuchi, while investigators were initially treating him as a witness. His behavior in the early hours of the search shifted their perspective. While sitting in the back of a patrol car, Fuchi was not distraught. Instead, he used his phone to film social media content, including a selfie with a peace sign and a caption asking if anyone had seen Tristyn. When later informed of Tristyn's death, his reported response to deputies was, "How is that my problem?"
Fuchi was a fellow student at Patriot Oaks Academy and lived on Castledale Court, just a short distance from the Bailey residence in Durban Crossing. To the community, he appeared to be an ordinary middle schooler. However, the investigation into his background revealed a hidden interest in violence. A search of his bedroom uncovered a notebook filled with drawings that detectives described as violent and satanic. His peers later informed investigators that Fuchi often carried a knife and had frequently spoken about his desire to kill someone. The connection between the two was established through their social circle and proximity as neighbors. On the night of the disappearance, Fuchi had specifically asked a friend for Tristyn's phone number. He then contacted her and convinced her to leave her home in the middle of the night to meet at a mutual friend's house. They left that residence together at 1:10 a.m., walking toward the wooded area where her body would eventually be discovered. The motive for the crime remained a central mystery that deeply disturbed the community. There was no evidence of a prior conflict or traditional grievance between the two teenagers. Instead, witness testimony suggested a premeditated thrill killing. Fuchi had told his girlfriend and other friends to expect a murder to happen within the month and described his plan to take someone into the woods to stab them. Investigators were left with the terrifying conclusion that Tristyn was not targeted for who she was, but because she was available when Fuchi decided to act on his fantasies. This set the stage for a reconstruction of events that would pit Fuchi's claim of a simple push against the brutal reality of the evidence, based on forensic evidence and surveillance data. The reconstruction of the crime reveals a timeline that contradicts the initial statements provided by the suspect. At 1:45 a.m., residential surveillance recorded Tristyn, Bailey and Den Fuchi walking east on Saddlestone Drive toward a wooded area near a retention pond. This was not a chance encounter. Phone records show Fuchi had specifically contacted Tristyn to convince her to leave her home that night.
The physical evidence at the scene indicates a visceral struggle that occurred in the isolation of the woods, while Fuchi later claimed he merely pushed Tristyn during an argument and she hit her head. The autopsy findings tell a different story. Tristyn suffered 114 stab wounds, primarily to her head, neck, shoulders, and arms. The presence of 49 defensive wounds serves as a definitive record of her attempt to fight back and escape her attacker. This impossible choice to resist, documented by the medical examiner, highlights the psychological terror of the confrontation and the duration of the attack. The evidence that bridges the gap between the suspect and the act was found during the autopsy. Investigators discovered a metallic fragment embedded in Tristyn's scalp. When divers recovered a buck knife from the nearby pond, they found it was missing its tip. Forensic analysis confirmed that the fragment in the victim's head was the missing piece of the knife owned by Fuchi. At 3:27 a.m., less than 2 hours after they were seen walking into the woods together, surveillance cameras captured the conclusion of the perpetrator's movements. Fuchi was seen running back toward his home alone, carrying his white sneakers in his hands to avoid leaving footprints or to hide the blood that would later be found on his clothing. The forensic certainty of the knife fragment, combined with the sheer volume of injuries, transformed the case from a disputed altercation into a documented, premeditated murder. The legal proceedings against Aiden Fuchi began with a significant shift in jurisdictional weight, given the calculated and violent nature of the crime. The state attorney's office made the decision to charge the 14-year-old as an adult with first-degree murder. The air in the courtroom was thick during the hearings, where the Bailey family sat just feet away from the teenager accused of ending their daughter's life. Fuchi's demeanor throughout the initial proceedings was often described as detached, a stark contrast to the emotional weight of the evidence being presented. The defense's strategy was complicated by the overwhelming volume of physical evidence. They initially faced the evidence of the knife tip found in the victim's skull and the blood-stained clothing recovered from Fuchi's bedroom, facing a mountain of forensic certainty and witness testimony regarding his premeditated thrill-killing comments. The legal battle reached a turning point just before the trial was set to begin. In a surprise move, Aiden Fuchi changed his plea to guilty, admitting to the first-degree murder of Tristan Bailey.
During the sentencing phase, the prosecution presented the full impact of the crime, detailing the 114 stab wounds and the markings left on the body. The judge heard from Tristan's siblings and parents, who described the Bailey 7 as being permanently broken. The defense attempted to point toward Fuchi's aging home environment, but the court focused on the level of premeditation and the sheer brutality of the act. Judge R. Lee Smith looked at the defendant and handed down a sentence of life in prison under Florida law. Because he was a juvenile at the time of the crime, he is eligible for a sentence review after 25 years, but the immediate impact ensured he would not walk free as a young man. The sentence provided a form of finality, but as the family left the courtroom, it was clear that the legal victory was only the beginning of a much longer recovery process. The impact of Tristan Bailey's death extended far beyond the courtroom, fundamentally altering the Durban Crossing community and the St. Johns County school system. In the wake of the tragedy, local schools increased mental health resources and safety awareness programs, focusing on the identification of warning signs in adolescent behavior. The Bailey 7 became a symbol of resilience, and the community transitioned from a state of shock to one of active memorization. To honor her legacy, a foundation was established in her name, and the neighborhood created a permanent memorial at the site near where she was found, ensuring that the vibrant spirit of the 13-year-old cheerleader is not overshadowed by the violence of her end. The human echo of Tristan's life remains visible in the sea of teal, her favorite color, that frequently blankets the community during memorial events. Her family continues to advocate for victim rights, turning their private grief into a public mission to support other families facing similar tragedies, rather than a closed file in a police archive. Tristan's legacy is treated as a living memory, a reminder of a girl who was known for standing up for others. As of the most recent records, Aiden Fuchi remains incarcerated, serving his life sentence. His case continues to be a point of reference for national discussions regarding juvenile justice and the terrifying reality of thrill killings. Tristan's story is a reminder that even in the quietest towns, justice is a flame that must never be allowed to go out. The Bailey 7 may be physically incomplete, but the strength of the community ensures that Tristyn's voice continues to be heard. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We post crime case videos every night. Until next time, stay sharp, stay vigilant.